In 1964, Muhammad Ali shook up the world by defeating Sonny Liston. Afterwards, many believed the occurrence to be a fluke. Their second fight should have put that notion to rest, as Ali knocked Liston out in the very first round of their rematch. The moment was captured in what became one of the most iconic sports pictures ever taken. Ali standing over Liston, screaming at him to get up. Surely, Ali assumed that he had put any doubt about his legitimacy to rest. Instead, the knockout became one of the most controversial, highly debated sports moments ever. A great deal of fans, and even professionals in the boxing world, believed that Liston had taken a dive for the mafia. Some claimed that Ali had never thrown at all, giving rise to the conspiracy theory of the Phantom Punch. The controversy was so great that a segment aired on TV with boxing experts discussing the matter. The guests included former heavyweight champions Jack Dempsey and Rocky Marciano. But as slow-motion footage later revealed, Ali's punch did in fact connect. So in this video, let's take a look at exactly how Ali set up his Phantom Punch, and attempt to answer if the blow was actually hard enough to score a knockout. To start with, Ali's punch was no lucky accident. He drew it out on purpose, and already had a counter in mind. Arguably, there has never been anyone so adept at drawing punches to counter as Ali. He was a master at constantly maintaining a distance that was infuriatingly close, but just out of reach. He would leave himself wide open, hands down and chin out, so that he could tempt his opponents into becoming overly aggressive. His sense of distance was so great that he could turn his head as he pulled to let punches just barely graze him. For instance, here Ali leans back and turns his head to let a hook just skim his cheek, then counters immediately to knock out his opponent. This was one of Ali's favorite traps, as was the draw and counter sequence that Ali used against Liston. By staying just out of range, Ali invited opponents to step deeper and deeper as they jabbed. In other words, Ali was actively encouraging his opponents to put their chins within easy reach of his counters. Ali evaded these overextended jabs with head movement and subtle footwork, stepping out off-center to get a superior angle, and driving opponents into a hard counter right. Ali used a similar tactic against Zora Folley, slipping Folley's jab and stepping into his right. So it's clear that Ali set this shot up on purpose, and that the shot had been sharp enough to knock down Folley. But against Folley, Ali was not moving backwards as he threw. Did he have enough weight moving into his fist to really put Liston down? All evidence suggests that's very possible. After all, Ali was moving backwards when he knocked out George Foreman and Cleveland Williams. And Anderson Silva's knockout of Forrest Griffin is a more modern-day example of the exact same setup being used. A big factor that many may not have considered was that Liston, like Griffin, was moving into the punch, and this can greatly amplify the force of the blow. Now that that's out of the way, let's get technical and look at the exact sequence and movement patterns Ali used to trick Liston into stepping directly into his punch. The first thing to note is that Ali actually squared up his shoulders as he pulled. This is the exact opposite of what most boxers do, who usually prefer to hide behind their lead shoulder as they pull. But Ali squared up to prepare his rear hand. In fact, it seemed he used his opponent's punch striking his shoulder as a sign that he had the right distance. Notice how in the Folley fight, Ali tries to throw each and every time Folley's jab hits his shoulder. Next, notice how Ali cross steps at the same time, swinging his rear leg behind his front, just as he did in the Williams knockdown. Squaring up your shoulders and cross-stepping are, again, two seemingly contradictory movements. However, they both serve to place Ali's punch directly in line with Liston's chin. Finally, notice how Ali plants down on his rear foot as he connects, and then drops his weight into the punch by sliding his lead foot backwards. Ali's low hand position also came into play, as his punch caught Liston completely by surprise, coming up from underneath his line of vision to circle around his shoulder before finally extending. Of course, it's the punch you don't see that's the most devastating. So, since Ali was totally capable of landing a knockout punch in this manner, The last remaining question is whether Liston could have gotten up if he wanted to. While that's only for Liston to know, those who knew them are doubtful that someone as prideful as Liston would have thrown a fight for the championship of the world. And in case you're curious, the two heavyweight champions, Jack Dempsey and Rocky Marciano, both went against the rest of the guests on the show and said that they believed the punch was sufficient to foul Liston. But that's just my take. Feel free to let everyone know your thoughts in the comments. And check out my books on power, footwork, and defense, linked in the description. From The Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.